and welcome to Video School of Music, series for piano number 1, lesson number 1. I was just having a little bit of fun while the cameraman got ready. I'm very glad you joined us on this very exciting and new method of learning to play piano. I think it's very unusual. It's the first time I've been involved in anything like this, and when I was approached to do this, I had a few reservations, but also had some very positive thoughts about it. Let's have a look at some of the things that are different about this method of teaching to all other methods of teaching. But even before we look at that, let's say that it's not really intended to replace that close relationship that can exist between a teacher and their student. But some of these interesting points. There are certain disadvantages from the point of view of the students, and the biggest one is you cannot ask a question just when you want to. Something could be just beyond you and you don't think it's been covered. There's nobody you can ask. Certainly you can't ask your teacher because he's made the recording and is in a different part of the world. Who knows? But that's something that is very difficult to overcome, and unless you have an access to a piano teacher, maybe at school or something like that, maybe it's just something that will come to you naturally. But that is certainly a disadvantage. Another disadvantage, and I wouldn't say this is not just almost as important, and that you can't be praised when you do something right, and that is so important to keep the student interested and carry on with their practice. But there are some very, very positive things about this method, and that is that the student can progress at their own pace, perhaps even more than with private tuition, because especially in the case of a student who may be an older type of student who might fear that the teacher wouldn't have patience with them and so forth, can view the same thing over and over again, even if it takes just a little bit extra to sink in. So that's a very important thing, and much in the same line, the lesson can be repeated over and over until it does sink in. Okay. Also, another plus from students' point of view, they can share. A whole family can share the lesson material, friends can share the lesson material, and so forth. From the teacher's point of view, the biggest disadvantage is that I don't know who you are. You know who I am. My name is George Boyer. It's up here somewhere, it'll be revealed, but I think you saw it on the back of your video cassette. I don't know your name, I don't know your age. You might be young or not so young. Could be a boy or girl. I have no idea. So I've got to watch exactly how I speak, because I might be talking down to you like you might be an adult, and you might feel like I'm talking to you like a child, but let's get over that little problem. That's something we've just got to get used to as the lessons go ahead. I also don't know where you're starting. I can only assume, having been introduced to this video cassette, I can only assume that you are a beginner, so I've got to cover just about the whole lot from the word go. Another problem I have is that I can't observe your progress, but that should be solved somewhat by the fact that you can progress at your own pace and repeat material as you find it's necessary. Some of these disadvantages are overcome for me by the fact that I know that I can reach more students than I otherwise could. You might be living in the back of some small country town, maybe that's not even big enough to have its own music teacher, and that way you might have access to piano tuition that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I think with those comments, I would like to certainly welcome you to the course, and I'm very interested in teaching you the next 10 lessons. All right. Up here is a chart of the piano keyboard, or part of it, and you can see that there are white keys and black keys. Now the black keys are arranged in groups of 2s and 3s. Now that's a very handy thing. If you didn't have black keys, and some of the very early pianos didn't have them, just imagine how difficult it would be to find your way around the white keys. Now, someone suggested, now wouldn't it be easier to start with a piano that all the black keys put down one side, out of the way? Well, let me assure you that it would not be. Just imagine if that was your piano keyboard. How would you know what any of the notes were? They all look the same. But with the help of the grouped 2 and 3 black notes, you know straight away exactly where you are on the piano. There are 88 keys on the grand piano. We're using a grand piano. At home you may have a grand piano also, or you might have an upright piano which sits up against the wall. Upright pianos normally have 3 less keys up the top of the scale. They only have 85, but I don't think that'll hold you back very much, certainly not in the first 10 lessons. Okay, pianos have keys. Keys must be identified somehow. They've got to get names. They could have been numbered from 1 to 88, but I think that would have been very clumsy. So what we've done is given them names of the alphabet. Now, your first thought might be that there aren't 88 letters of the alphabet. Fortunately, we don't need them, because there are, as I said, groups of 2 and 3 black notes and around them is a group of white notes, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those 7 white notes get names of the alphabet, letters of the alphabet, and they start with A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay? And we only need those 7 because after that the same pattern repeats. Okay? Now, as you go through the 10 lessons, you'll find that a lot of things will fall into place, a lot of things will make a lot of sense. Occasionally you'll find that something doesn't make quite a lot of sense. In fact, you might wonder why it was that way. I'm afraid I found that the same, exactly the same when I was learning. In fact, what I asked is, why is A where it is? When everybody learns to play piano, the teacher points out, this is middle C, and I'll be doing the same. Why C? Everything starts with C. C is not the first letter of the alphabet. I can't give you the reason for that. All I can say is that's just the way it is. You've got to accept it. See that one there? That's your middle C. And you can find it on the piano too. And again, not exactly in the middle, but very close to the middle, slightly to the left. Okay? Most pianos are able to be locked, certainly the older ones. And the keyhole would lie round about here. A little bit to the left of it, where you see a group of 2 notes, lies your middle C. Right there. As you can see, it's slightly to the left of the dead centre of the piano, but that's your middle C, and that's your starting point for all your subsequent lessons. Alrighty. Now, there's your middle C. Once we go from C, and we've used up the 7 letters of the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, back to A, which is the first, and B, then we repeat C, and so on and on they go, all the way through to both ends of the scale, both ends of the piano keyboard. Right, now before we go very much further, we've got a question of tuning to consider. It's very important because unless we can play our 2 pianos together, it's going to be very difficult for you to go through these lessons. Now, your piano may sound to be in tune with itself. If it doesn't even sound to be in tune with itself, it's absolutely essential that you get it tuned, because even to practice it on its own will be just difficult to put up with your own ear, plus everybody else will be very annoyed. So get your piano tuned by all means if it's out of tune with itself. Now, even if it sounds in tune with itself, we might still have a problem. This piano here is tuned to the exact pitch that it should be. Now, your piano at home may not have been tuned for some time, in which case the strings lose a little bit of their tension and it'll sound perhaps a little bit off pitch, what is known as not on concert pitch. Now, if that's the case, I might play my middle C here. You might play your middle C at your piano, and if it don't sound the same, it'll be very, very annoying. Now, if this lesson was something like a guitar, I could say, well, look, tune your string to my string, and it's done very easily. A piano can't be tuned like that. It's quite a long, time-consuming business, and if our pianos are not in tune, you're going to have a lot of problem with keeping up with the lessons. Now, at the end of this lesson number 1, we've arranged to give you a tone, or certainly to give your piano tuner a tone, which will be the tone of A440 as it sits on your, as it plays back on your video cassette. So he'll be able to take a reading of that, and he'll be able to tune your piano to that tone. So your piano will be not just in tune with itself, but it'll be tuned exactly to the pitch of this piano as it sounds on your video cassette. All right. Now, one of the most important things you're going to have to learn is, apart from just moving your fingers at the right tempo and so forth, is to be able to read music. Now, no musical course can be recommended without learning to read music. Now, that might be a big turn-off to a lot of people to say, oh, I know someone who can play by ear and they're pretty good. They're really going to be held back later on if they just can't read music. Now, if you're learning from the beginning and learning reading and reading music at the same time, you'll pick the 2 up and it won't be that much more difficult at all. Now, the symbols and the things that are used on the music, on the sheet music, could be a little bit hard to understand if you're confronted with it from the first. Let me take you on a little excursion in time and come up with an idea where if we didn't have sheet music and we had a little tune and we didn't want to forget about it, we wanted to hang on to that tune, how would we actually represent it? Let me just demonstrate with a little note, with a little tune that I'll just make up as we go along. Okay, it's a very simple little melody, and I may decide that that's important to to remember somehow. Now it's in my mind for a while, next week I might have forgotten it. So I've got to record it somehow. Now I can grab a cassette player and put it on that, and sure enough it's kept. But cassette players haven't been around for very long, and we've got music that's been around for centuries. Okay, now if the art of music writing was not in existence, and I wanted to write that down somewhere, I might do something like this. I might do exactly the same as you could, if you want to explain to your friend how to find way from his place to your place. You would draw a map. It's exactly what I'm going to do. I've got a drawing, courtesy of Parlings, here of the piano keyboard, and I'm going to draw on that exactly what I played. I started on middle C, then I played D, E, F, G, E, D, and C. Now I want to represent that on paper. I could do it by saying, okay, first thing I did is play the middle C, put a little circle there to mark that. Next thing I played was a D, okay? So imagine something like that. Next thing I played was an E. Then I played an F, so a little circle there, G, circle there. Then I played an E again, D, and a C. Okay, that's one way of showing or giving a written record or something like a map of what I've played on the piano. As the notes go to the right, or the circles go to the right, that represents that I went right on the piano. When I come back towards the left, shows that I came down left on the piano keyboard. Now it would help a lot if there were lines drawn down. Now I'm not very good at drawing freehand lines, not very good at drawing circles either, because I've had this prepared, and I did write this little tune yesterday. Line it up with middle C, might be even get it the right way up. There we go. Started with middle C, and I played D, E, F, G, E, D, C. Notice we haven't drawn a line for everything because then there'd be too many lines going through these little circles. So I think one line for every second note was quite enough to show the position of that little circle. Not only that, but I did something else. The notes that I played close together in time, notice, the notes that I played close together in time, I've pushed together on the board. So whilst we got going up and down the piano keyboard here, we've got an imaginary line coming down, and it could be representing time, you see. Let me go through. So you've got a constant imaginary line coming down representing the time. Okay, now we've been reading books and things for many a year. We don't read from top to bottom, but we do read from left to right. So let's see what happens if we turn this from left to right. Might be a bit more easy to read. And hello, what we've got is in fact what was called the grand staff. 11 lines with a thick line in the middle representing middle C. And that is exactly how music was represented in the old days. Middle C, heavy line for middle C, and circles like that, exactly where the notes were. So when you're coming up, you're going up to the right on the piano in the higher notes. When you're going down, my little tune didn't go below middle C, but the principle is the same. Any notes shown below that, below middle C. Okay, again, we've got this imaginary line going from left. We have one problem. Whilst we've got the position of the circle, whether it's on a line or in a space, telling us exactly which note was played, we haven't got quite accurate representation of the time involved in playing it. Okay, well the way that was solved is this. First of all, the board was rubbed off. Second of all, the system of counting was introduced. So this little tune I've got, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one way of doing it. The correct way of doing it, for the purpose of this lesson, would be to play it at half tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, even teachers make mistakes. I had that all ready to say at that tempo, but yet I got it wrong. Never mind. Now, so the 4 counts you've got, that represents in music, in musical time, as a bar, okay? Now, the circles that you've seen on this chart are in fact used, and a circle like that gets 4 counts, and it's called, to represent a whole bar, a whole note. Okay, now we had notes which are only half that long. What we do, we draw a circle and give it a stem. I can't write very well from pushing the pen ahead, so I come to this side of the board, and that's called a minim. Now we'll draw a minim again. This time we'll fill the head in. That becomes a crotchet. Okay, now the whole note gets 4 counts, the minim gets 2 counts, and the crotchet gets 1 count in the bar. Okay, so now go back to our little tune. The first one is 4 counts. These have got to be filled in and stemmed. It's not going to be very neat, but it'll demonstrate the point. Okay, and that's how the notes look. Now the bars are separated by lines like that. And that's the way that little tune would have appeared on the grand staff. 4 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, I'd like to reduce that to size because it is rather big. We'll get rid of that one. Roll these over. Have a look at the grand staff of 11 lines with the thick line in the middle in the centre for middle C. Okay, what's happened is that that was too cluttered for reading, and even with the thick line in the middle, it was just far too much to look at. So what has evolved over time is that the first top lines were moved up a little bit, the bottom 5 lines were dropped down a little bit, and the middle C over there will appear on an extra line called a ledger line, spelled L-E-G-E-R, either in the top or the bottom halves. Now that is known as treble clef, treble meaning high. That's known as bass clef, bass meaning low. That is your bass clef sign, that is your treble clef sign, and as a matter of interest, the treble clef loops around the second line, which is, you'll find will be the G line, and the bottom, it's also known as the G clef for that reason, and the bottom one loops around the second line again, counting down, and that's also known as the F clef. Okay, so there's C, D, E, F, G. Let me draw my little tuning on what we've now got as the proper staff. What we've got is 4 counts on C, then we've got D, E, F, G, 2 counts on E, 2 counts on D, and another 4 counts on C. Why don't you go to the yaw piano and get your thumb onto middle C, and we'll play this tune together. Okay, thumb on middle C. All right. The notes you are playing are C, D, E, F, G. So you don't have to worry about the fingers, they'll just lie naturally on those 5 keys. Okay, so play the first bar, depress C and hold it for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. After that, the second bar you'll play D, E, F and G. Okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? The third bar plays an E and a D with 2 counts on each. Okay? 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the fourth bar, same as the first bar, 4 counts on C. Okay? Let's play that together again on the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. D, E, F, G, E, 2, D, 4, C, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you won't have that music in your book, but it is on the screen in the video, so you can rewind it, you can even pause it, have a look at it, maybe copy it onto a bit of paper for yourself, and have a little practice. Practice it with both hands. I'd like to give you some advice with the use of your videotape for future lessons. I could tell you not to view future lessons, that it may not be a good idea, but you're going to do it anyway, and really it won't do you any harm. What I would advise though is that you don't try and attempt the more advanced material that's further up. Have a look, but come back and do the lessons in time, in order, and don't progress to the next lesson until you're quite comfortable with the one you've just finished. Another thing I'd suggest you to do is when you do go on to your next lesson is to have a look at it once or twice from start to finish. Having done that, go back and just progress through the material and stop at any point where you feel it's important just to have a little think about it. Review any part that you didn't quite understand. When it comes to playing the new tune for that lesson, let me play it through. If I stop and if I prompt you to play with me, do it. If you can't quite keep up with the tempo, stop the tape, do it by yourself. You've got the music in front. Use your grand staff, count your notes up and down. You'll find them all. It's very simple. And if you keep up the good work, I'll see you in lesson 2. Bye. Hello and welcome to Video School of Music, lesson number 2 in the first series. Hope you've had a lot of fun with lesson 1. There wasn't a great deal of serious work in that one, but I think lesson 2 is when we get right down to it. So roll up those sleeves and let's have a look at some of the theory behind all music. Here's our piano keyboard, courtesy of Mr. Parlings. Okay, we've learnt about the notes, the names of them, but there's one thing we didn't cover. That's the black notes. Now the black notes don't have their own names. In fact, what they do is they borrow their names from the white notes on either side of them. A little bit more about that later on. But I think the important thing is to learn that the distance between any two given notes, right, the distance between any two keys on the piano is called an interval. Okay? Intervals are distances between two notes. Okay, here is a note called E, one next to it called F, and the distance between those, which is the smallest distance possible, that's two adjoining keys on the piano, two keys right next to one another, and that is called a semitone. Okay? Now, the distance between middle C and D, because it has a note, because these two notes have another note between them, is therefore greater. It is in fact two semitones or a whole tone. Okay, so I've got to get this very clear in your mind. The distance between notes that are next to one another is a semitone, and between two notes that have another note between them is a full tone. Okay, let's have a look at F and G. What do you think is the distance between those two? They are right next to one another, sure, but there is a black note between them, and that black note sounds different to these ones. Let's have a listen to what it sounds on the piano. F above middle C, there is G, black note between them. Okay, so there's a semitone between G and that note, whatever its name will become, and that note and F. All right, but the distance between F and E is a semitone because there's no black between it. Okay, now I won't repeat that again. If that's not quite clear, wind your tape back, have a listen to it again. Okie doke. Right, semitones and whole tones. One octave, C, C. The interval between notes of the same name is 1 octave. Or, if you're going from there to there, it's 2 octaves. It's a little bit easier than saying 24 semitones or whatever the case may be, because let's count the number of semitones between the two C's which represent an octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12 semitones spells 1 octave. Okay, write that down because that's an interval that you're going to come across very, very often. The word octave comes from Latin, and Latin 8 is something like OCT. Not quite sure how you pronounce it and speak Latin, but it certainly comes from the Latin word for 8. Okay, over here you've got two hands, and they are your left and right hands. Whenever a note is to be played by the thumb of the right hand, that's going to be given finger number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Similarly for the left hand, thumb, 2,